So I asked the question, what is the worst advice you've ever got on growing a dropshipping store? And by far the most repeated answer to that question was some sort of testing products consistently. And this was surprising to me, so right off the bat we have to answer that question. Why is testing consistently so dangerous for dropshippers like you and me? And I have to say this because this was my initial response. Test products consistently and you will make it, but I've thought long and hard about this and realised that the big issue with this when you're watching this, the second thing, and that is testing products consistently. If it becomes more important than the other things in your store that matter, more for real growth in your store, then it kind of becomes dangerous. It really becomes a bad thing because I think the assumption behind this advice that's so often thrown around of just test products consistently, it's that somehow you've got to do or die. Test once a week, test every single day, or even test twice a day. Or you assume in your mind what testing consistently means. And that got me to the point of asking myself this question. Is it that we should be testing on a schedule or testing when we have a solid researched and backed product that is proven to sell? And I think the answer isn't quite as simple as one or the other. To me, it's yes to both. Now let me explain what I mean by first explaining why we even test products consistently. Because there's got to be a reason why that advice happened to spread in the dropshipping industry itself. And I think it's because if you're a complete beginner, it kind of makes sense to test a bunch of products because you're brand new and you really don't know what works yet. And you need to kind of get your foot in the door. And if you go hard on just testing a bunch of products, all you really need is a couple to stick and then scale. Now in theory, this makes a lot of sense. And it's something I used to religiously do back in 2020. And I was doing very well with this. And then the argument on this side is also keeping commitments. If you have a regular testing schedule, which you're saying, I'm going to add consistently products on my store and test on a consistent basis, and you're keeping to those commitments, you're also kind of keeping yourself very accountable, which again is overall a very good thing. So does it matter really if you test consistently or on a regular testing schedule? Now I think it kind of does, but not in the way that we assume that it does. You see, I want you to delete this from your brain, that the idea that there is some sort of testing schedule that beats everything else. And if you don't follow that testing schedule, then your dropshipping dream will ultimately fail. The reality here is I kind of like to look at this theory like fishing. When you're fishing, you put some bait on your hook, you put it in the water, and that is your potential for you to catch a fish right now. In theory, the more lines you have in the water, let's say you had 10 fishing poles, then you would have more of a likelihood of catching a fish. Or in our analogy, with dropshipping, the more likelihood of finding a winning product and getting initial sales, then scaling up, and ultimately getting your desired results within your store. And the more lines of water of your products being tested means the more potential for a result with each line in the water. But here's where things kind of get a little bit tricky, and that is the idea of higher quality lines in the water is a higher potential of getting better result. And so higher quality bait on each of these fishing rods or each product that you've done the research on, rather than just testing stuff and chucking stuff out there, means more potential for better quality results. And this is where the analogy kind of breaks down because we're not obviously reeling in fish. Our customers are not fish. But the analogy does hold. In fact, the more lines or more products you have tested on your store, the more likelihood of a result. So this is why I think the testing consistently advice is so often repeated in this space. But I'm going to propose my new response on how you should test products. And it's actually quite simple. How long does it take for you to find a researched product, and how can you then come in here and compete? And then, and only then, would you add that product to your store and then begin to test. Because from my research, looking at tons of dropshipping and e-com stores in the space, and from speaking to my clients, you need to actually provide real value in your products you're testing. And it's really not as simple as just adding products willy-nilly. Now, can it work? Sure, but I'd much rather have a higher chance of products sticking and testing. Because if you do it this way and you find a big winner, you can actually go to the point where you don't need to test anything for years. One big winner can last you years and years with results. But I also will say there are some catch points you want to be looking out for on your stores that might indicate that you're testing way too often for what you're currently capable of. And that is if you feel like your products aren't getting any traction at all, and yet you're still testing and pumping stuff out there, that is a bad sign. You need to slow down and pull back and actually look at how much you're testing. And two, you might be getting some initial sales, but you still aren't profitable with ad spend. So you're doing better than the first point, but you just need to go back and ask yourself why. Because if a product is getting some initial sales, it's usually just a small tweak somewhere in the funnel or if your ad strategy to get this profitable. Now, there are a few catch points that I see happening. Now, one is I call them mental gremlins. If all the little voices in your head are telling you that you never produce any good products to test, or that your products are just completely trash and you can never get results, that's completely false because it's simply not true. You don't have enough data or the fundamental frameworks to get results yet, because the expectations you have in your brain are just simply not there. And that ties in closely with the second catch point I see happening, and that is you're reading your results wrong. Because here's one of the biggest things I'm looking at, and this is what I'm really hoping you will get out of this video. The shift I want you to make here is the shift away from testing products consistently. Like I have to set all these crazy goals of testing this many products by the end of the week. Change this mindset into consistency with effort, because there are a huge difference between these two things. And I'm seeing in the space that consistency with effort with your testing is like a hybrid version of the two. And if that takes you longer to get a product out there, that's fine, because that consistency with the effort is the only way you're going to actually get results with your dropshipping stores. And it's so important for actually creating a long-term brand. And if you're still not at 10K a month with your stores, I actually created this video here where I show you the exact steps to do that almost 5 years ago today and how you can implement them for yourself.